กราบนมัสการ The Most Venerable พระธรรมพัชรยานมุนี The Most Venerable Dr. วิชยาราชปุระศรีละวันสาเทโร Excellencies, dear participants, I am deeply honored to welcome you today to this virtual event to commemorate the International Day of Vesak, organized by the embassies and permanent missions of Thailand and Sri Lanka, with the support of the United Nations Office at Vienna. We all gather here today to celebrate the day of Vesak, which falls on the full moon day in the 6th month of the lunar calendar. On this very day, Buddhists around the world recollect with respect to the birth, the attainment of enlightenment, and the passing into parinirvana of the Lord Buddha. The Lord Buddha's teaching was passed on to billions of people over the past 2.5 millennia to observe compassion, train their minds to protect them against defilements, and live their lives in a balanced approach. The contribution of the Buddhist teaching to the spirituality of humanity has been recognized by the United Nations General Assembly. The commemoration of the International Day of Vesak has been held annually since the year 2000. The Most Venerable Mahasangha, dear participants, please allow me to introduce the program of our virtual event today. After this introduction, we will hear a message from the United Nations Secretary General, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, to be read out by Mr. Denis Thatchai Chawalit, the Deputy Director General of the United Nations Office at Vienna. Our keynote speaker today will be Prathamma Pachara Yanmuni, also known in Thailand and to many of his disciples around the globe as Phra Ajantaya Saro. He was born in 1958 on the Isle of Wight, United Kingdom. He started studying about Buddhism while living in England and decided to move to Thailand in 1978 to become a disciple of Ajahn Chah, one of Thailand's most renowned Theravada Buddhist monks and meditation masters. He was ordained as a monk at Wat Nong Pakong, a forest monastery in Ubon Ratchathani, the northeast of Thailand, in 1980, and assumed the position of the abbot of Wat Pa Nanachat, the international monastery, from 1997 to the year 2001. Phra Ajantaya Saro's teachings and meditation retreats have offered inspiration to millions of monastic and lay Buddhists. Many of his Dhamma talks are broadcasted through various platforms. He has written many books in both Thai and English, many of which have also been translated into other languages. In the year 2021, he was bestowed the title of Phra Tham Pachara Yan Muni by His Majesty the King of Thailand. On this occasion of the International Day of Vesak, Prathamma Pachara Yan Muni has kindly accepted an invitation to give us a Dhamma talk on the topic, a reflection on peaceful coexistence that could guide us towards our peaceful coexistence in light of the current situation around the world today. Dear participants, may I now invite Mr. Denis Thatchai Chawalit, the Deputy Director General of the United Nations Office at Vienna, to deliver the message from the United Nations Secretary General, followed by the Dhamma talk by Phra Ajantaya Saro. After the Dhamma talk, we will also hear a message from the Most Venerable Dr. Vichaya Rajapura Silawansa Thero, the Chief Incumbent of Dhamma Centrum Yanapotinika in Vienna, then followed by remarks from His Excellency Mr. Majinta Jayasinghe, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka. I thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to share with you today the message from the United Nations Secretary General on the commemoration of the International Day of Vesak. It reads, and I quote, I send my warmest wishes to all celebrating the day of Vesak. For millions of Buddhists around the world, May's full moon represents a sacred occasion honoring the birth, enlightenment, and passing of Lord Buddha. This year, Vesak arrives at a moment of multiplying crises, from an unequal recovery from COVID-19 to the punishing effects of climate change to conflicts, divisions, and violence. Each crisis reminds us of how far we have fallen away from Lord Buddha's timeless teachings. This Vesak, let us seize the moment of spiritual renewal and honor Buddha's wisdom by coming together as one in solidarity and shaping a better, more peaceful world for all people. End of quote. Let me end by thanking the Permanent Mission of Thailand and the Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka in Vienna for organizing today's event. Happy Vesak Day.
So on this very auspicious occasion, one in which we are recollecting, commemorating, celebrating the birth, the enlightenment, the parinibbana of the Buddha, I've been asked to give a few reflections on the topic of peaceful coexistence. Peace is something which, as Buddhists, we are firmly convinced is a possible outcome of following the Eightfold Path. The Buddha became the Buddha as it were a representative of the human race. He proved through his enlightenment what human beings are capable of. He realized a completely unshakable, inalterable peace through wisdom. So this is one of the lessons that we learn from the Buddha's enlightenment, that the most profound peace is not to be discovered through removing oneself, withdrawing from phenomena, but through fully comprehending them and understanding them. But the peace that the Buddha realized, and the peace that his disciples, many of his disciples, both monastic and lay, have realized over the past 2,000 more years, is a personal, internal kind of peace. The world around these peaceful individuals has generally not been so peaceful. And so it's, I think, important that we look into the causes and conditions of peaceful coexistence by asking ourselves whether or not such a thing is even possible. I am a rather pessimistic view of this, in that the nature of the world is impermanent, fluid, fragile, vulnerable, and that no one state, whether it's a peaceful state or a violent state, is sustainable for any length of time. I think what is important is that we have a feeling of commitment towards creating peace, whether it's internally or in families, in our communities, amongst nations, as best we can. And that begins with finding the necessary causes and conditions to reduce or to protect against the incidences of violence and war in the world in the first place. And indeed, organizations such as the United Nations established with this very idea. Why I think that our emphasis should be moving towards peace with a recognition that it may not be possible except in rather superficial and temporary ways, is because of a simple observation of human nature. Let's say we have 100 people sitting together and we want peace amongst those 100 people. Then every single person, all 100 of those people, would have to give their assent and to do their best to sustain that peace. Whereas to create an unpeaceful state of conflict and violence, you only need one person. So silence in a room of 100 people needs 100 people agreeing not to speak. Noise and commotion needs only one person. So there's a fundamental asymmetry, imbalance here, that this is not a majority rules issue, in that the power of small numbers of people to create suffering usually, in almost every case, exceeds the power of a small number of good people to create goodness in the world. And I see that as being just a normal part of samsara, a means of being in this imperfect, suffering world. There will always be conflicts of interest in families, in communities, in countries, between people who live in different regions, people who have different livelihoods, between people in the cities and people in the countries. There are going to be increasing conflicts over natural resources as time goes on, and climate change accelerates. So the opportunities, the conditions for conflict are always present, whereas the conditions supporting the resolution of conflict are rarely present. So I think it is important to recognize that this is an uphill task, but the slogan which inspired me 50 years ago is still one that stays with me today, and that's asking yourself the question whether you want to be part of the problem or part of the solution. So assuming that everyone here is wanting to be part of the solution, then how do we do that? Well, the first consideration is our conduct towards each other, of course. And given the fact that there will always be people who are selfish and cruel and act in immoral ways, then we're always going to need laws and regulations and protocols, agreements, customs, and so on to minimize the impact of such people, and to give a sense of order and stability and reliability to to governments and any kind of organizational structure. People need to feel safe. So morality in the Buddhist sense are training, a way of educating or training your conduct in such a way as to create the optimum conditions, the best possible conditions for growth in Dhamma, in goodness and virtue and peace. So living together in peace, the Buddha pointed to two important features. One is a shared commitment to moral standards, taking them on voluntarily as commitments and promises to the people around one. And secondly, shared values, and coming back again to the values on which we want to live as individuals and as in families, in communities, and trying to harmonize those values and to speak both on the level of ideals but also on more practical level of how those ideals can be applied in daily life and in the way that we live together and work together. So this is the level of conduct or sila, beginning with shared respect for and commitment to standards of conduct, how we behave towards each other. Then on the level of the heart, we need to be systematically developing those mental states which are conducive to peace and systematically working to reduce those mental states that lead away from peace. So meditation plays a very important role here, and where we're turning the focus into our minds and starting to look at our minds and learning how to train our mind, and by giving your mind a very simple task, such as focusing on the breathing process, inhalation and exhalation, then by doing so you expose all the thoughts and emotions that are usually passing through your mind. Now you have a blank screen, as it were, on which they are revealed or illuminated, and begin to see anger as an impermanent conditioned mental state, seeing jealousy, seeing desire, seeing craving. So all the mental states that one formerly identified with and considered them a part of who we are now revealed as impermanent conditioned phenomena. So this is not a philosophical stance, it's the observation of body and mind that can be produced by this very simple process of giving yourself some time to be by yourself and learning how to look within your mind, learning how to observe body and mind. So the way that the prejudices and cravings and greed and all these destructive emotions are weakened is by seeing them for what they are. Peace comes through seeing things in their true light, letting them go. To do that, we have to develop that patience and consistent effort and willingness to stop and look within on a regular basis, learning to be more present to our experience. And then as we observe the arising and passing away of negative emotions within our own heart, we come to understand others. We feel more empathy for others. Because in our own heart and mind, we observe we don't want to get angry with anybody, we don't decide to be jealous or decide to be greedy and selfish, but these things arise in our minds, and it's so easy to be carried along by them, even when we're making the particular effort not to do so. And then we think, well, if it's so difficult to let go of these negative emotions with this amount of effort and sincerity, what expectation can we have of others who've never even considered making the effort in the first place? So understanding how conflict and violence and war arises from understanding the inner causes through the attachment to impermanent mental states as being me or mine. This allows us to stand back from the black and white, us and them, right and wrong, kind of blunt analysis of what is going on in the world, and be able to adopt a more nuanced and a more complex awareness of all the different causes and conditions that come into play. So we learn as individuals to peacefully coexist by learning from our own experience and being able to apply that to the way that we relate to others, understanding others because we understand ourselves, we understand the way that the mental states that are at the root of violence and conflict arise, and how to identify them and to let go of them. So there is this effort on the in terms of abandoning unwholesome mental states, developing wholesome mental states. But the most important feature is wisdom and understanding, and looking again and again to try to understand the way things are. This is the most important feature of Buddhist training. I think that our effort is to try to see things clearly and to abandon the obstacles to clear seeing, because the more we understand, the clearer our minds, the more options we have, the more constructive our actions are, and the more that we can be part of the solution rather than the problem. Problem of war and conflict is not going to go away. But we can do what we can as an individual and as members of family and communities to reduce as far as possible the causes and conditions of conflict, and to promote and embody in our own lives the causes and conditions for peace.
Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to extend my sincere appreciation to the Director General and the staff of the United Nations Office and the Embassy of Thailand in Vienna for organizing this year's commemoration of the United Nations International Day of Vesak. On this day, we should not forget to pay special tribute to late Honorable Laxman Kadirgamar, the former Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka, who pioneered the initiative and proposed to the UN General Assembly that Vesak be recognized as a special day at the United Nations. As most of you know, Vesak is the most important holiday of the Buddhist calendar. The day that celebrates the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and passing into Nibbana. On this day, through worship, ritual, meditation, recitation, and shared meals, we pay homage to the supreme spiritual teacher who opened for us the doors to the deathless. Vesak is also an occasion when we can follow the Buddha's example of compassion, his heartfelt concern to relieve the suffering of others. If you wish to pay homage to the Buddha in the month of Vesak, we should continue his compassionate mission of helping others. One way we can do that is through giving. Today, for many around the world, the gift of food is an urgent need. Close to 1 billion people suffer from chronic hunger and food insecurity. Several hundred million live at crisis levels of hunger, close to the edge of survival. I would like to remind you on this important day. The Buddha praised the gift of food as foremost among all material gifts, as a gift that conduces to life, health, beauty, happiness, and mental purity. I wish you a happy Vesak Day. May the Triple Gem bless you. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to extend my sincere appreciation to the Director General Galdawali and the staff of the United Nations Office for their selfless effort to commemorate the United Nations International Day of Vesak. I wish to especially thank Her Excellency Morakat Srivasti, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Thailand, for organizing this year's commemoration, as well as the Reply Corps and all of you for earnestly participating in this virtual event. At the very outset, I wish to highlight that Buddha's teachings embodying noble human values, which significantly the United Nations fully subscribe and uphold as universally sacred. These include the axiom of metta, unconditional friendliness or boundless goodwill, karuna, compassion, harmony, and peace. These and other universal teachings have impacted humankind for over 25 centuries. This notably was the thrust of Sri Lanka's initiative under the visionary leadership of Foreign Minister, the late Honorable Lakshman Kadrigama, to urge United Nations to commemorate Vesak as a day of universal importance. Despite dramatic advances humankind has achieved, especially during the past 2 generations, the world has dismally failed to overcome global challenges. The Buddha's timeless and universal significant sublime teachings, such as the natural universal law of nature and life, which underlines the inextricable interdependence between humans and all living organisms and Mother Nature, and the axiom of samagga, or kinship, among humans, transcending whatever differences, have never been more critical in human history than in contemporary times. Buddha's proactive, holistic prevention strategy is most certainly far more sanguine than expending vast resources annually on piecemeal countermeasures, such as the mounting awareness programs and projects on the devastating repercussions of global challenges. I conclude by reiterating that the sublime teachings of the supremely self-enlightened Buddha was unraveled and taught for the benefit of humans as well as all living beings and the global ecosystem. It is my fervent prayer that world leaders will take heed of the Buddha's timeless universal teachings. The enlightened efforts of the United Nations, along with its specialized agencies in this regard, will no doubt contribute profoundly to not only overcoming global challenges, but to preempt them from happening in the first place, as underscored by the Buddha. May you all find refuge in the noble Triple Gem. Thank you.
The Most Venerable Mahasangha, dear participants, we have come to an end of our program today. I trust that our activity today, especially the Dhamma talk by Prathamma Pacharayan Muni, will be beneficial to all of us. I hope, in particular, that the essence of the talk could serve as a reminder for us while recalling on this solemn occasion of the birth, the enlightenment, and the passing to parinirvana of the Lord Buddha, to reflect on ourselves, cleanse our minds, and maintain our constructive actions, to lessen as far as possible the causes and conditions of conflict, and to promote as far as possible the causes and conditions for peace. In closing this event, I wish to express my utmost appreciation and gratitude to Prathamma Pacharayana Muni for the valuable time within his extremely busy schedule to give us the enriching and inspiring Dhamma talk. My sincerest gratitude also goes to the Most Venerable Dr. Vichaya Rajapura Silawansa Thero, the chief incumbent of Dhamma Centrum Yanapotinika in Vienna, for his kind message. Moreover, I would like to thank the Embassy and the Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka for co-organizing this event, as well as the United Nations Office at Vienna for its support. Finally, I wish to thank all the participants who join us today, as well as those who are watching this program through our social media platforms. I wish you a very peaceful International Day of Vesak. กราบนมัสการ and สวัสดีค่ะ